We're joined from Canberra now by the Shadow Treasurer, Joe Hockey. Mr Hockey, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
You have said the government hasn't gone hard enough. How much harder should they have cut last night?
Well, Michael, it's really a confused budget. On the one hand, they say they're going to bring it back to surplus to pay down the debt, but buried deep in the budget papers is a proposal to increase the debt borrowing capacity of the Commonwealth Government from $250 billion to $300 billion. So why would they need to increase the debt limit if they're so confident that they're going to have a string of surpluses? There are other areas. They say it's about taking care of the Labor battlers. Why would they be cutting the Medicare safety net if they were actually trying to help the Labor battlers? And it goes on and on. They've made promises. They're breaking promises. It is a confused budget.
Well, how much better could the coalition have done? Your frontbench colleague Andrew Robb was telling the ABC last night that he figured a coalition government would have got a $15 billion surplus last night. Is that on the mark?
Look, from our perspective, our numbers would tell the truth. And I'm sure that would be the perspective of the Australian people as well. That's because we wouldn't have these game playing. I mean, look, these handouts, which are in the budget, look like a last-minute addition. They certainly don't indicate tough love, as Wayne Swan would suggest. Wayne Swan says that there's savings that are going to bring the budget back to surplus, but in fact, moving from a $44 billion deficit to a $1.5 billion surplus is based overwhelmingly on $39 billion of extra revenue, most of it increased taxes. So from our perspective and the perspective of the Australian people, I think many will be bewildered about what this budget is meant to deliver. It does nothing to inoculate us in any way against the challenges of volatility in Europe and elsewhere, and it bets everything on the mining boom.
Now, looking at that handouts, let's focus firstly on the extra $3.6 billion in cash assistance to low and middle income earners. Will the opposition vote in favour of those measures?
Well, for the measures that apply in 2013 that are effectively further compensation for the carbon tax impact, we're in principle going to let those through. We want to get rid of the carbon tax. The carbon tax was the elephant in the room last night in the budget, and we are going to oppose just handing out money before the end of this financial year, which is a sugar hit to try and save Julia Gillard's leadership. And we think that's bad public policy.
On that front, you're going to oppose at least the first tranche of the so-called school kids bonus. Why are you doing that, and won't that hurt parents?
Well, it has nothing to do with school kids. It's just money going into people's bank accounts, whether they like it or not. They're going to get that money. And most of them haven't even claimed that money when they were previously entitled to it. So why would you force money on people, hard-earned taxpayers' money on people, whether they want it or not, and say you can do whatever you want with it in this circumstance?
What would you give parents instead?
Well, we'll look closely at the government's proposal to redefine the education tax rebate, but we'll go through our party processes and consult others about it. We don't want to see waste, and we don't want to see irresponsible decision-making, and unfortunately they're hallmarks of the Gillard government.
The company tax cut is officially dead. As you know, the Federal Treasurer Wayne Swan is blaming the opposition for that, saying it would never have got through Parliament. Do you see the death of that 1% company tax cut as a victory for the coalition?
No, it's another broken promise from the government. As I said, they make promises, they break promises. For example, the $500 instant write-off in income tax returns that the government announced as part of the mining package was meant to start on the 1st of July. They've dumped that as well. We weren't opposed to that, but they've dumped it at any rate. That's because you can't believe Labor's spin. Look at what they do. Only a few weeks ago, they were saying how important it was to get the company tax cuts through. They would have got them through for small business because the Greens were backing them, but they dumped those as well. So it's pure political spin from a desperate government to try and blame us for everything. I mean, next they'll blame us for all the cold weather in Canberra.
And on that front, is the coalition government still committed to bringing in a company tax cut of its own?
You'll see all of our policies before the next election, which is now scheduled, I must say. It's still scheduled for about 15 months' time. And given that there was a deterioration in the budget this year of $20 billion, so this time last year, the government said there'd be a $22 billion deficit. It's turned out to be a $44 billion deficit. Given that deterioration in the last 12 months, Lord knows what the real state of the figures are going to be in another 12 months.
But just to clarify, will the coalition government stick to, will the opposition stick to its promise of, at least as your leader says, a modest company tax cut?
We haven't changed our position. We haven't changed our position. We will deliver modest company tax cuts, and you'll see that.
And also, I just want to clarify something else, Joe Hockey. You told Chris Uhlmann on 7:30 last night you were strongly critical of the 20,000 extra public servants you say have been employed since Labor came to power. Is that the sort of magnitude of public service cuts the coalition is now looking at?
No, we've said previously, we went to the last election saying that we would reduce the public service in Canberra by 12,000 over the first 2 years through natural attrition. That hasn't changed. And what also hasn't changed is that the public service is around 20,000 personnel larger in Canberra than it was when Labor first came to government.
So is there scope to cut an extra 8,000 public service positions?
So Labor expects everyone in Australia to cut their own cloth, but when it comes to their own business, they don't cut theirs.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.